Welcome to episode 109 of our monthly show. And joining me once again is the man of the hour, Mr. Scott Wright.
Oh, yes, it is. It's the hour.
It is the hour.
Here I am.
You're the man.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here again. Just if we just keep doing this stuff and we keep getting bigger and bigger stories, and it's going to be a fun one today.
Yes. And our monthly show is all about doing a deep dive into one of the hot topics, either we've mentioned on the podcast before or something that's just going on in the industry that we find interesting. This one, actually, we haven't talked about on the weekly show or any show for that matter.
I don't think so, but I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it.
Yes. And the topic for today is Clubhouse, which is the new hotness in terms of social networks that everyone
think back to 2005 when this thing called Facebook came out, and it was
I remember those days.
I
remember those days. And Twitter, 2008, I believe, was the year, and it was.
I might be a little early with Facebook. I don't know. When did it start?
Facebook was before that, but it was still very small. It was MySpace was the first social network that was
before the shared security or the social media security podcast.
That's correct. In fact, it was the talk that Kevin Johnson and I did at DEF CON that one year, which was 2009.
Yeah, when we started
the podcast
show. That's right. Yeah.
And we talked about hacking. Well, different ways to hack and find private information on Facebook.
Yeah. This podcast has evolved from, we started out a little bit technical, but now we do a lot of, you don't need to get that technical to understand and debate the the issues.
That is correct. So let's talk about Clubhouse.
Clubhouse.
So this is an app that I'm sure you've probably, if you follow Elon Musk on Twitter or in the news, you've probably seen him talk about Clubhouse. In fact, he did a broadcast basically on Clubhouse talking about Tesla and SpaceX, and he had interviewed the Robinhood CEO in that interview as well.
It's been around, I think, for almost a year. Like it was sometime in the spring that it started out, and I think that's early on. Like Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen, I think, had invested in it. And that's kind of where I heard about it, was in the startup forums that I'm in. And it's all the rage, right, for investors and startups to be talking about, it's one of the sort of hot topic areas that's covered in Clubhouse.
Yeah. So let's talk about what Clubhouse is and how it works to start things off. And so it's a social networking app, and what's interesting about it is it lets people get together in audio only mode. So there's no video, there's no pictures that are shared. It's strictly audio. So think of it as like a kind of a social podcast app, if you will, right? Where people can go into rooms and then they can talk. So you can see lists of, who's in the room, so who's listening, who's talking. There's actually a moderator that will moderate the conversation, and you can actually raise your hand. So if you're familiar with like Microsoft Teams, or Zoom, you can raise your hand and a little signal will go out, and the moderator can essentially call on you and you can begin speaking. They also have the traditional things that a regular moderator can do, like, kick you out for inappropriate behavior or other things like that. And it does have some private chat features as well. So 2 or more users can join a room. Well, we'll get into privacy.
We'll get into the privacy part
in a second. But and Elon Musk kind of made this more popular because of course, anything that Elon Musk does and tweets about, it gets so much attention. In fact, when Elon Musk joined Clubhouse for his first talk that he gave, it almost crashed pretty much the whole infrastructure of Clubhouse. So,
it's certainly gaining popularity, and of course, they do that thing that generates more interest by limiting the number of people who can join, like they control the flow by having invites, right?
That's right. So you can't just you can't download the app and just sign up. You actually have to have an invite from an existing user. And I think it's 2 invites per user. Is that how they get
I don't know,
out?
but I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think I've seen that.
So these invites obviously are hot right now in the tech community. In fact, someone had posted that they're actually putting invites up on eBay and they're auctioning them off for money and all these crazy things. So if you want to participate in Clubhouse, it's probably best just to wait till the hype dies down, and when they start opening this app up to general users, unless you happen to know somebody.
Yeah. And I guess that's, grabs people attention and generates, buzz, which is of course the point of it. But I only really heard about Clubhouse about maybe a month ago. And as I said, it was in the startup forums that I'm in, and kind of surprised, that it's grown so quickly. And at the time, I was doing a bit of work. I had done a couple of appearances on some privacy conferences, and it just sort of coincidentally came up, and I'm going, geez, I wonder about this privacy part of this thing. And I saw a really interesting post on LinkedIn. There was one of the LinkedIn Pulse stories, and they pretty much, lambasted it for the privacy aspects of it. Yeah. The fact that it's basically contravening almost everything in the GDPR privacy requirements. So it's, the first thing, and I think it's one of the first things that people point out, is to really do much in it, you have to import your address book. And anyone other than, the hardcore security and privacy people aren't going to create a separate, account of address book with nothing in it to share.
Unless you're paranoid like me.
Like I said, the hardcores. Yeah. So I did not. I actually, on the same day that I got offered to join it, because I'd seen people talking about it and said, I'm haven't heard of it, would like to learn more. Somebody said, here, would you like an invite? And then at this very same time, I came across this story, and I'm going, whoa, if I'm going to claim to be any kind of a privacy advocate, I got to be careful what we do here. So it's the fact that you have to share your address book with them. That's reminiscent of the old social media, and LinkedIn and Facebook still do this a lot.
They do.
They don't make it mandatory, but Clubhouse kind of seems to railroad you into it. So you can't do much without it.
Yeah. And I love the flip of that, right? So if your number is in somebody's address book that happens to, be joining Clubhouse, you're now in that ecosystem, whether you like it or not, because your information has been uploaded. So
it's tempting to say, well, I'll just go in and not share my address book and see how far I can go, right? The moment you put in your phone number or your email address, they do a search on everybody in the platform that's got your email address or phone number in their address book, right? So then you're going to start getting those creepy messages.
Yes. Hey, your so-and-so friend just joined Clubhouse.
Well, not only that, but as they said, you'll get 30 or 50 people already following you that you didn't even know were on there, right? And they know because you've just entered your own information that was in their address book.
And you can also connect your Twitter and Instagram accounts.
And why not,
So, that wasn't enough.
So, and something that I learned during that time, obviously, is, it is so common and becoming so popular in certain topic areas, right? And I see it in the startup area. I think there are a number of others. You might recall, I can't remember what it said in the article, but that, it's becoming a really hot thing, right, to have a Clubhouse meeting on certain topics. And some of them are really gaining a lot of momentum, right? And so one of the things that I realized, having this sort of paradox of, need to promote privacy versus need to grow and be attractive to investors, as a startup, it points to the problem that we have in the startup ecosystem, where investors aren't really that concerned with the regulations. or the privacy risks, right? And it even goes back to like 10 years ago, I did a talk here in Ottawa on social media privacy, just after you and I started doing the podcast. And remember, we had come up with the sort of the three main rules, right? Be careful who you connect to, be careful your settings, your privacy settings, and then apps and stuff like that. And I started out the talk saying, we all wonder why these apps like Twitter, they were fairly new, why they're so insecure. There's breach stories, all over the place, and people's accounts getting hacked before two-factor authentication and all this stuff. And I sort of raised the point that if you think of it from a startup's point of view, it's really hard to justify spending a lot of money on security and privacy before you know if the solution is even going to sell, right? You have to put every dollar you have into showing investors and people that it's valuable. And especially with things that are sort of relying on the network effect, right? Which is the more players you get, in social media, so social networking, it's the key, is the more people that join, the more value there is in that whole platform. And when that is your business model, it's really, really hard to say, I'm going to build in privacy by default.
Sorry, too late.
It's almost too late. Yeah. And if investors actually recognize that and said, you know what, we want you to be responsible and make sure that you're building, according to the privacy by design frameworks or compliant with GDPR, then we'll look at investing in you. But they don't do that. And so it's a massive disincentive for startups. I'm not saying I have the solution. I'm not saying that it's right that businesses can start up without regard for privacy by design or regulations. I've started ClickArmor with privacy in mind. I've consulted, privacy experts, minimizing the amount of data we have, disassociating identities from the data we collect during operations, stuff like that. It all makes sense and it is good, but we're not relying on that network effect, right, to generate the value in the solution. And so I would contend that you could not build another Facebook according to privacy by design principles. It just wouldn't fly. And Clubhouse seems to be flying because they are ignoring the privacy.
And now a quick word from our sponsors. Given the state of the world that we are currently living in, your digital privacy, cybersecurity, and health is more important than ever. That's why I recommend the use of a Faraday sleeve for your laptop, smartphone, and key fob. And if you want the best Faraday products on the market, you need Silent Pocket. And because you listen to this podcast, you can take 10% off your order right now during checkout at silentpocket.com by using discount code SharedSecurity.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca/sharedsecurity to learn how to build a self-defending team.
Clubhouse reminds me a lot when Twitter first came out, they weren't even talking about how Twitter is going to make money because it was all about features and functionality. And I remember this is back in the day when there were no ads on Twitter because that wasn't even a concept. It took years before they figured out, okay, how do we monetize this?
Yeah.
And that was really driven by their investors and the tech community. And then they finally figured out, okay, now there's ads, there's promoted ads, there's all these different types of ad mechanisms on Twitter. And they're actually making money now. I think the same thing for Clubhouse is, right now there's no way, they haven't figured out how to monetize it, but that is the end goal. And security and privacy just usually isn't part of those initial conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
Security is not going to make you money.
Yeah. And, there's some other little things that come out of left field. Like I read somewhere that Clubhouse relies on a company in China called Agora that does a lot of its basic functionality. Right?
Yes.
And
that's now,
there's a risk now of course,
oh,
not only the ones that we've described, but there's all kinds of risks in that.
Yeah, that alone, just having a Chinese company, that's hosting your back end. And we've talked about this on the show before, and there's just a lot of research that's been done on China and how China controls their businesses, especially the tech businesses. I mean, look at TikTok as a great example, which is why, the US government last year was in this big uproar about, we're going to ban TikTok because there's the potential for the Chinese government to be siphoning data from these apps. And, this new revelation is also very concerning. And it's not just for US citizens, but I'm thinking of like Chinese citizens that may be using this platform for political commentary, things that the Chinese government is just going to outright try to ban.
China's in this really kind of a dilemma that they probably, it's a good problem for them to have, right? So they basically own one of the companies that this whole platform relies on, and I think on February 8th, basically they blocked access to the platform for people within China.
Yeah.
So, as the Great Firewall we talk about sometimes, maybe we should just touch on that for a minute about what that is.
Yeah, China has, they call it the Great Firewall. I think it's named after the Great Wall of China. But essentially, China has the largest technology, and call it a firewall, if you will, of censoring and blocking sites, apps. Everything is government controlled. Internet access is controlled by the Chinese government. And so they can put in restrictions and blocks and other things because it is centrally controlled. And that's kind of what they call the Great Firewall.
Yeah. So they're trying to keep, observations about what's happening within China from leaking out, and trying to keep the Chinese citizens from learning about, some of the things that are happening outside. So, and then they've got control of one of the companies that's actually part of this platform. So it is kind of scary.
Yeah, it is. And the Chinese-owned companies, they essentially report through the government. I mean, that's communism 101. So we often forget that, but that is how the government controls the businesses and that associated data that's very important to them.
Yeah. So all this to say, if you're thinking about going on Clubhouse, what would you recommend, Tom, as ways to reduce your risks?
That's a tough one because, it is still in its infancy, right? And the good news is that, we're talking about this. I know there's other, people in the security community talking about this now. It's starting to get more media attention, and, I'm hoping that we'll be providing influences, to have these conversations, and hopefully they're going to start putting in, like basic controls around privacy. I think they're going to have to, if they want to eventually, not be the conversation of, say, the US or the Canadian government saying, well, we're just going to ban it because we don't want our citizens using it because of GDPR and other things. So I would say tread carefully. I was also going to add that there was another security incident just a couple days ago. Someone found a way to remotely share, essentially found a way to take audio and metadata from these streams and then share that essentially with others. So again, getting back to the privacy issues, anything you put in this app or anything you talk about is, could eventually get out, like any social network. Right. It's no different. The same rules apply. If you post something, somebody could screenshot it. If you say something, someone can record it. I mean, the way that they're getting around these private chat rooms and like Elon Musk's talk, you could go up on YouTube right now and listen to and watch the whole thing because someone streamed it from their phone. So, Yeah.
There's such a young platform. It's probably not surprising they don't have a lot of the, access controls and security features that Facebook now has or Twitter now has. Remember in the old days, Facebook and Twitter used to allow metadata on the JPEG files you'd upload, right? And so you could track people from their posts on Facebook and Twitter. And of course, they've clamped down on a lot of that stuff now. But a young platform like this, that's the least of their, challenges at the moment. But at some point, they will have to address those things.
Yeah, they're going to grow in scale. Absolutely. But I don't see a major shift in the way that they're going to address privacy or security anytime soon. I think when they start opening this up to the public, they're going to have something in place, because still access is extremely limited, unless you happen to be lucky and get an invite. So
yeah. I mean, there's it's going to be a daily flow of security news and privacy news around this app. I was first sort of drawn into it. I think it was there's an article from January 26th on LinkedIn from a guy named Alexander Hanff, Hanff, and his description says helping organizations leverage the benefits of data ethics, GDPR, e-privacy, privacy by design. So, well-read privacy guy, and he has just a scathing article in this, and it's really kind of almost funny to read if it wasn't so serious. But I think somewhere in one of the comments, there's thousands of comments in it now, but one that I saw was that this company, Clubhouse, was only 9 people like a month ago. Mm-hmm. And they're getting like $1 billion valuation.
It's crazy
because they've raised $100 million in investment. And it just, like I said, it goes back to the problem of investors not really caring about that stuff. I mean, some do. I can't say they all don't, but
sure,
you just get a few that will value it at that. And then there's, a lot of startups going, gee, this is a good business to be in.
Yeah, the almighty dollar has a way of doing that to people, and that's amazing. A company of only 9 people, and I think about that, like there's no cybersecurity person or privacy person in that.
The chief security officer is not likely to be one of the first 9 employees.
He's got a couple of the founders, maybe some full stack developers, and that's it. So
yeah.
So
anyway, it'll be interesting to follow the story, but thought, we hadn't talked about it, and it is something people should know about before they jump in.
Yeah, before you know it, we'll have the Clubhouse Privacy and Security Guide.
Maybe we need a new podcast.
Maybe a whole new podcast. I don't know, but
it's things never get dull in our world.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
All right.
All right. Well, I like it. Nice short episode. Do you have anything coming up that you want to plug, or?
Now that you mention it, not coming up, but I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago on gamification of cybersecurity awareness.
Nice.
And we had quite a good turnout. It was really nice to see. It was primarily aimed at managed service providers who are serving small businesses. They tend to be, more at risk and less able to really put the big security technologies in place. So it is important to the managed service providers to have good security awareness. So that's where we're sort of focusing a lot of attention these days. So really happy to see the turnout. A lot of people saying, this is really different than anything they've seen before. So that's great. And we'll hopefully have some more exciting news soon on things.
That is awesome. So speaking of webinars, I do have a webinar coming up myself, which is March 18th. I'm doing a webinar called DevSecOps and Application Penetration Testing. Which should be...
Tanya's going to be heckling from the sidelines.
I would be honored if Tanya was attending my webinar. That would be totally amazing. But yeah, if you're interested in that topic, seeing where penetration testing fits into a DevSecOps environment, we'll have a link here in the show notes, and
that's great.
We'd love to speak more to you.
And I've got a whack of new Can I Be Fished podcasts to put up in the next little while. I think I've got 6 up now, and another 3 more, I think, coming. So that'll be good.
Excellent.
People love unboxing phishing messages.
Yes, great
on
podcast. Definitely recommend everybody check that out. The video podcast and the audio podcast.
Yeah, the audio is kind of challenging because it kind of got to describe what we're looking at when we look at a phishing message, but it's pretty still pretty informative, I think, to be able to get the message, pound the message home that, you got to look how you look at sender name information, email address information, links, etc., rather than just telling people be careful.
That's right.
So anyway, but yeah, thanks for your support on that, Tom.
Yep, and we will link that on the show notes as well. So
awesome.
All right. Well, that's all for this month's show. Don't forget to check out the weekly podcast that we release every week. We have Scott on that show, Kevin Johnson. We're mixing it up.
Yeah. Someday we'll do a battle royale with Kevin and.
I'm
Kevin
planning that already.
The shades of our 10th anniversary show with Jason Street.
That's right. We'll revisit it. Yes. All right, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.